Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some massive news for the Oregon Duck fans coming out of the transfer portal as they land their second quarterback of the cycle and former five-star quarterback Dante Moore. Now, many Oregon fans listening to this know formerly committed to Oregon, ends up winding up at UCLA. I mean, he's been through the gauntlet at UCLA. Bad offensive line, really struggling offense. He comes to Oregon looking for development. And for Oregon Duck fans, you look at this quarterback room and not only what it might be in 2024, but what it can be in 2025 as well. You have to be fired up about this one. Really excited to get into Dante Moore, one of the more talented quarterbacks in the entire country. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. This has been a program we've loved talking about. The Oregon Duck fans, you guys have shown a ton of love, a ton of support to the boys. Can't thank you guys enough. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dylan, I'm going to give you the T-box here. Dante Moore, as Michigan fans, a quarterback that we know very, very well. Heading to Eugene, how are we feeling?
I mean, this would excite me to no end if I was an Oregon fan, because now essentially, like with Dillon Gabriel, you have a very high floor, but probably a pretty low ceiling comparatively. With Dante Moore, you essentially have the opposite. So you have like the best of both worlds coming in. And God forbid, if Dante Moore figures this thing out, look out college football, because like the talent, I mean, there's no disputing that.
Let's have that conversation. And I think it's a conversation that we're going to be having in the spring and into fall camp. Is Dillon Gabriel enters the fall camp or spring camp, I should say, into fall camp as the quarterback one of this offense. Knowing Dante Moore, having watched Dante Moore at UCLA, the arm talent and the ceiling of what he can be in an offense is quite apparent. I don't think it's crazy to talk about in August a heated quarterback battle heading into 2024 with Dante Moore and Dillon Gabriel. Now, what makes you said it best. You have a very, very high floor with Dillon Gabriel. You know what you're getting, a guy that's one of the more prolific, productive quarterbacks that we've seen in college football. But you have a guy in Dante Moore that you talk about elevating an offense around you. Like Dante Moore certainly can do that.
And I'm excited to see him because, again, you kind of mentioned it. Like UCLA just stunk this year on offense. It didn't matter who was playing. The offensive line was bad. I think the skill, aside from Sturdivant, really wasn't top tier. At Oregon, you kind of have the opposite. You have a very, very good offensive line, at least what looks like to be a very good offensive line. You have elite skill, and you have a coordinator in Will Stein who, I mean, I don't know how you don't really believe in what he's done. And you just saw like kind of the development of Bo Nix through his time from Auburn to his first year at Oregon to his second year at Oregon. I mean, he just took monster leaps. So Dante Moore is looking, I want development. I want a chance to go to the NFL. Good fit at Oregon, because you saw what they did to Bo Nix. They turned a guy in who you kind of saw at Auburn be like, oh man, well, he has his moments of flashes, but he has too many bad moments. They cleaned that up really quickly at Oregon. And if they can do that to Dante Moore, again, what we kind of talk about, this is a national championship winning talent.
Development, that's what you're selling. And a lot of people are going to kind of write Dante Moore off as a true freshman that is a bust. He struggled as a year one guy. You very rarely see true freshmen start at the college football level, right? You go back to his class, guy like Arch Manning or Jackson Arnold, some of the more talented quarterbacks we've seen come out of high school, they all rode the bench and kind of came up in mop-up duty. The only freshman quarterback I can remember coming in and taking control is Trevor Lawrence at Clemson. He was truly a generational talent with a ton of talent around him as well. You look at Dante Moore in that UCLA offense. If you watch the games, you see the arm talent. I mean, this guy makes throws that not many quarterbacks in college football can make, but you look at what was around him. I mean, 159 pressures given up by UCLA's offensive line, a 9.5% sack rate. That was 115th in the country given up by UCLA's offensive line. You look at Oregon, not only do you have one of the best run games in the country, Oregon, 1% sack rate, number one in the country given up. Only 44 pressures. That is a third of the pressures that Dante Moore saw at UCLA. He'll be seen at Oregon. So you look at all the boxes checked for Dante Moore to have development in this offense. Good offensive line, good run game, massive weapons. And you said it, one of the best offensive coordinators in the entire country.
I wouldn't overlook in terms of developing and like being put in a better situation is if that's a healthy competition between Dillon Gabriel and him, no better quarterback in college football to learn under, because there's not a lot of guys who've just thrown as many passes as Dillon Gabriel. That's all he's done in his times in college is he was in air raid systems. He's thrown a lot of passes. He's made mistakes. He's kind of hit the highs, he's hit the lows, like a very good quarterback, assuming it's a good, like spirited. And I would not doubt Dillon Gabriel wouldn't behave like that. You've seen a very much a pro in how he treats the game from his prior stops. Again, another part that I think people might overlook in terms of UCLA had none of that. They had very unproven quarterbacks. They had bad quarterbacks. I'd say that. You look, every quarterback who played at UCLA last year struggled. So it's just a 180 in terms of environment all across the board.
You look how you want your quarterback room to look. Like, this is how you want it to look, right? A 6-year senior, one of the more experienced quarterbacks, and has played at a high level in Dillon Gabriel, and a young up-and-coming quarterback that the future is bright for Dante Moore. For Oregon fans, like, going into the Big Ten, you have a proven guy in Dillon Gabriel. You have a guy that offers you an extremely high ceiling in Dante Moore. I think it'll be a competition, but that you're going into the Big Ten with very, very good quarterback play, because one of these guys is going to be very good for the Oregon Ducks. And Dill, you take a look at Oregon, I mean, just starting to heat up in the transfer portal. And we said this, when you recruit like Dan Lanning and you have a base talent on your roster, you don't need to go out and grab 25 players in the transfer portal, because they ain't 25 players that even can make an impact on this Oregon Ducks team in the transfer portal. That's how good this Oregon team is. That's how healthy the roster is. You add a guy like Matthew Bedford, who's going to kind of just add more body, and certainly a big body on the inside of that offensive line. But what's more exciting is some of the guys Oregon's trending for. And Dill, one of your personal favorites here, a guy in Kobe Savage from Kansas State trending to Oregon. Tell us a little bit about Kobe Savage.
I mean, you just like watch what he did at Kansas State. Very Evan Williams, like,
yeah, that's what I thought too.
In a big time playmaker. Again, something I feel like people kind of like lose sight of when they're thinking about what makes a safety really good. It's a guy who's getting his hands on football, getting takeaways, I should say. I mean, a fair amount of interceptions, and tackles really, really well in space. It's exactly what Evan Williams was doing for them. You saw how effective he was, and I mean, he'd be a perfect fit, I think, with Oregon if he wants to play in a similar game.
Evan Williams 2.0. Like, that's what, if you're Oregon, like, that's what you need to know about Kobe Savage. Guy, 115 tackles through 2 seasons at Kansas State, 6 interceptions. Dill, you talk about checking the box and being a playmaker. I mean, 6 picks in the Big 12 through 2 seasons. And what I love most, very similar to what Evan Williams did with this Oregon offense, versatile. Right, this is a guy that took 284 snaps inside the box as a box defender, another 164 as a slot, that nickel back role, and then 242 as a free safety in the back end. He might
even be a bit better in coverage, frankly, than what Evan Williams
I think he is.
Forte wasn't necessarily covering guys.
Yeah.
But you've seen Kobe Savage, I think, can kind of run up and play a little bit more of that nickel pure cover kind of style.
And that's no knock on Evan Williams. I think that's just more of how high we both are on Kobe Savage. We watched a decent amount of Kansas State. Like, this dude flies around, makes plays, and you're looking, if you're Oregon, like, this is a guy that's a kind of difference maker and can do a lot of different things. And again, I always say it, in an era of college football where offenses are trying to get so dynamic and have so much speed on the field, for you to have a guy that gives you that ability to cover, but also be a hammer in the run game in terms of coming up and making plays and be versatile, that's huge. And then on top of that, a guy that allows you to give a lot of different personnel looks. And we can put him out in that center field safety role. We can blitz him off the edge. We can play him as kind of a hybrid linebacker. You have so many ways that you can get Kobe Savage involved, I think, a massive piece to this defense. And I mean, Oregon's going big game hunting. Make no mistake about it. The last guy I want to mention here, obviously Walter Nolan visiting Oregon's massive news, and we'll see how that goes. But Dill, Caden Green, obviously the connection with Dillon Gabriel at Oklahoma, 6'5", 316 pounds, phenomenal true freshman year. And I'll say this, you don't normally find starting caliber offensive linemen in the transfer portal, especially guys that have multiple years of eligibility left. Caden Green is that guy, would be a massive addition here.
In very plug and play ready to, again, a spot that they obviously have guys to replace in Stephen Jones. And it's not to say that their other young talent isn't ready to rock and roll, as we've seen, but it's never a bad thing to add, especially a guy like Caden Green, who's very plug and play. He's very, for a freshman, he's about as proven as it can get.
And certainly could be a tackle in his future. Like, even if he just plays guard for Oregon in 2023, which he'll be a phenomenal guard, certainly has the upside to play tackle at an extremely high level as well. Oregon, making moves in the transfer portal. Dante Moore, just a massive get. Now, I'd be lying to say that I am excited to see if we see Dante Moore in 2024 as QB1 because I think
he cuts out there, because you gotta know he's great. Because if you
100% my take there. And sorry to cut you off. If he beats Dillon Gabriel out for that quarterback one spot, the upside that you are going to get, that shows that he's developed. So we'll see. I would expect Dillon Gabriel to be the guy, but having Dante Moore in the competition, certainly not a bad thing. Good problem to have for the Oregon Ducks. Dan Lanning, cooking up in Eugene. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.